Hi, everybody. So I'm really, really excited. We are here doing my very first TV show recap podcast, and we're going to be talking about The Crown, which is a new series on Netflix. And there are 10 episodes. We're going to be talking about episode 1, and I'm joined by my friend Tom.
Hi, everybody. My camera is working perfectly. I'm just working on my ventriloquism skills. So you won't see my mouth move at all.
Great. And Tom joined me to talk about Star Trek, the Star Trek movies, and that was so much fun. And so you want to check out that playlist if you haven't. And so now we're going the complete kind of other direction.
Yeah.
And we're talking about The Crown. And Tom is actually going to sort of lead off the questions for this podcast. So I'm really excited about that. But it just aired. They put it all in a big binge for Netflix. I don't know about you, but I haven't seen any of the other episodes, just episode 1. So if you're in the chat room and if you're in the comments, please, and you've seen the other episodes, please be respectful and don't put any spoilers in there, please, so that other people can enjoy, and we can just talk about episode 1. And so, yeah, I do have the chat room open.
Myself, and I like the idea of sort of sipping it like a fine wine over a few weeks.
Yeah, I'm not a big binger. I don't know. I just think it kind of ruins it. It's like I want to enjoy it, and I don't know. Just not my style. I'm with you on that one.
Okay, well, shall we go ahead and kind of commence with the questions here?
Yep, let's go for it.
All right. Well, let's step back. I want to step back a little bit and look at the subject because, and sort of, since this is our first one, I think this would be a good opportunity to sort of discuss what we each know about the royal family a little bit, or not like in terms of comparing who knows more, but just getting your impressions. What have you thought of them over the years? How has your opinion changed, and by what? Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know like tons and tons, but I have seen the creator and writer of this series, Peter Morgan. He did a movie called The Queen about Queen Elizabeth after the events of the passing of Princess Diana, and so I've seen that movie, and I did have a lot of fun getting involved with the whole royal wedding years ago. What was that, like 2008, I think, or 2009? And that was really, really fun. And I've really been impressed with William and Kate and their sort of decorum, and they just seem to have such a beautiful family. And I feel like that they really have kind of brought back the family into sort of made them respectable again after everything that happened with Charles and Diana and Camilla and everything like that. And so, yeah, and I've seen the King's Speech, so that was about Elizabeth's father, I think, if I'm not mistaken. And I think that's a really excellent film. I'm one of the few people who thinks that it totally deserved to win Best Picture over the Social Network. I think the Social Network's kind of overrated, and so I was really happy that it won. And I love that movie about him overcoming his stuttering problem that he had, and I thought that was really good. And so yeah, I guess that's about all I really know about about the royal family.
Okay. Yeah. My experience is pretty similar to yours. I've picked up on some trivia. I've watched a handful of documentaries as well as the fictionalized films you talked about, or sort of quasi fiction.
Yeah.
Growing up, I definitely kind of held my nose because the whole world seemed to, as a kid. I took the opinion everybody else did, and I sort of felt like, what are these people for? What exactly do they do again? Like that line on Office Space. What would you say you do here? I think the whole world kind of got that that feeling because they just seem to fool around with each other and provide drama for newspapers, all while appearing to consume um, government funds to live a very high lifestyle. Um, and you know that actually is not the truth at all. But I didn't learn that till much later. Um, but yeah, I think what really pivoted me in their direction was when I saw the Queen, and I started thinking, well, maybe there's more to these people than meets the eye. And it kind of shifted my attitude. And so when I saw this miniseries coming, I got excited um, because I was curious to see what well, Elizabeth as a young woman might have been like facing these overwhelming responsibilities.
Yeah, me too. I mean, I love anything British, so I love anything from British comedy. I love Monty Python. I love Jane Austen. I'm a huge anything Jane Austen. Pretty much, I love Downton Abbey. I watched faithfully. I love Sherlock. I'm just a big fan
Uh-huh.
of that. That for some reason the a lot of the stuff that comes out of Britain I really like. So that was sort of when I first saw it. I was like, ooh. And there haven't been that many of the BBC shows that, not the BBC, the Netflix shows that I've really been interested or wanting to watch
Uh-huh.
because of the mature content that they've had. And I try to kind of, especially, I'm much more picky when it comes to TV than when it comes to movies, because a movie is 2 hours I'm spending with these characters.
Uh-huh.
And whereas a TV show, it's years sometimes, depending on the
Yeah.
TV show. So I'm going to be a lot pickier about what I'm going to spend years with as far as content than what I'm going to spend 2 hours with.
Yeah.
So anyway, this does have TV mature, but so, I mean, I guess there was a little moment, but I hope it doesn't get too bad in that regard. So.
Yeah, I'm not too concerned about that. I feel like, and we can get into this more later, but I felt like, um, well, actually, this is kind of more in your arena where I feel like Netflix is trying to create a roster of shows that appeals to that the whole spectrum of them appeal to as many people as possible. They're trying to get as many
Mm-hmm.
subscribers as possible. And so far, not that you weren't already a subscriber, but assuming you weren't, this would have done it, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And yeah, I mean, they really have actually branched out a little bit more, because I should say I did watch the Fuller House.
Okay, yeah.
I did watch that series. Yeah, so they have branched out a little bit, and I will be watching the Gilmore Girls, and so there are some decent. I love the Voltron series, so there are some series that are well made, that are for kids and families and things like that. So it's true, they're
Yeah,
not
I
all
feel
TV
like this is.
mature.
I feel like this is uh, one of their smarter forays. It's a lot of their stuff has been very sensational, either in the superhero arena or with soap opera kind of stuff, or with continuing nostalgic hits like Full House and Gilmore Girls, etc.
Hmm.
Um, this sort of stands out as I think as being singularly adult, or I guess grown up in a way. You know what I'm saying? Like it,
Hmm.
and
Yeah, I think so. I think it feels like something that would normally be on Masterpiece Theater or on PBS or something like that.
right, and it occurs to me. I wonder if they're trying to attract some more baby boomer subscribers and try to get people to unplug,
Hmm.
because I think they've thoroughly hit the millennials. uh,
Yeah,
right
I
in
think
the
that's true.
right in the nostalgia. And anyway, um, okay. So, what were your expectations going into this, and were they met or exceeded, or how did it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So going into it, I did read a couple articles that this was the most expensive television show, or one of the most expensive television shows ever made. And so that definitely kind of piques your interest. $100 million just for this season. And, so like, ooh, it's kind of like, and I loved it. I thought this first episode was fantastic. I loved all the acting. I loved the story. I loved what we got to know about these characters. I thought that they were all pretty nuanced just for a pilot. I and everything, of course, looked gorgeous, and you could see the money was well spent, and yeah, I thought it was great.
That's something I wanted to address. Did you feel like the money was well spent? This, or you feel like there was
Hmm.
value there?
Yeah, I did. I mean, just that wedding alone, holy cow,
Yeah,
that was
I'm convinced
amazing.
that most of the cost is in sets, because while it's possible that many of these places are locations, all of them cannot be. I'm sorry, they don't let you into Balmoral Castle to film. They don't.
Right,
And Buckingham Palace, that's iffy. Um,
right.
I, I I know that it was a National Treasure too. I don't know how easy that is to book. Um, and this isn't Disney. This is Netflix. You know.
Right.
Um, yeah. So and yeah, all that I think was pretty impressive, and in such a way though that it didn't draw tons of attention to itself.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, just and the costumes, of course, are impeccably
Oh yeah.
made, and I don't know, it just was very well done, I thought. And I only had one thing that I'm sure we'll talk about, but I had one thing that I hope will grow on me, that I'm not 100% sold on, and has to do with casting. But uh, for the most part, I just loved it. I thought it was fabulous, and I cannot wait to watch the rest of the episodes.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. Good. Me too. I'm kind of in the same boat with you. So what surprised you the most while watching this?
Interesting question. It surprised me how the relationship of Philip, right? It's Philip and Elizabeth, because they were definitely like a love match, and the fact that they were like, I loved the line. Probably my favorite line in the whole thing was when one of the, I forget if it was Churchill's wife or who it was. I can't remember who it was that said something to the effect of, uh, "You got to give her credit for making this happen," because
Yeah.
he didn't have the, I guess, the qualifications that a typical person would have. And it's really interesting when you think about the whole sort of Camilla Diana kind of situation. You think about the Queen,
Uh-huh.
because they really pushed Charles to marry Diana, at
Hmm.
least according, what do I know? But that's the impression. And it's sort of interesting when you think about it, that if she had to be sort of a fighter for her own marriage, it's kind of an interesting thing. And I just thought it was such a really good written relationship, because it wasn't like cloying or perfect, but you could tell they were in love. They like passionately kissed, in a way that felt real. But yet they argued, they had disagreements. They felt like a real marriage.
Yeah. There's a distinctive sense of partnership between them. Um,
Hmm.
um, and sure there was sort of that sexual spark and that chemistry, but just the right dose, just enough um, between them. But mostly I felt like, yeah, that there was a really congenial partnership between them that you instantly like you instantly are rooting for them.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've read the sort of something I forgot to mention too is that I've checked out a book about a brief biography of Queen Elizabeth. And it's pretty short. I mean, you can finish it in an afternoon. Um, and I picked up some really interesting things from it that I will go ahead and share with you now, especially regarding Philip and the wedding. So Philip, it was quite a bit older. Is quite a bit older than Elizabeth.
Hmm.
I think to the tune of like 6 or 7 years older. They met when Elizabeth was like 13, and she was smitten with him right away. And um, there were definitely, yeah, there was definitely there were definitely plans to match her with other young men in her circle who were considered more eligible candidates, but it was always him. Like it, she sort of um, humored them in sort of in kind of dating them and hanging out with these other boys, but in the end, it was always going to be him. And uh, yeah, maybe it's sort of prescient that things were maneuvered her way. Also, I want to talk about what surprised me the most too, or what surprised me while watching this to answer my own question was how much I loved seeing the relationship between her and George.
Hmm.
Um, I really felt like it's hard to put my finger on. It kind of reminded me of relationships in my own family, and I won't get too specific, but um, the warmth between them and the trust, and that shone through really well. They clearly did their research because from what I've read, uh, George was always intended her to take over after him to be his heir. The situation with George becoming king was that his brother was the heir. Uh, he would have been King Edward, but he abdicated so that he could run off with Wallis Simpson, who was a wealthy American woman that he was having an affair with, and he was in love with her, and he couldn't be king and be in love with her, so he abdicated. If he hadn't, history might have turned out rather different because he was a Nazi sympathizer.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, and when he abdicated, and his brother George, Elizabeth's father, became the king, Elizabeth suddenly was in line. And the family kind of goaded him into, well, you better get busy on that male heir, right? Right? Right?
Yeah.
And he just sort of smiled, and he frequently favorably compared Elizabeth to Victoria, which turned out to be a bit prescient since Elizabeth has since broken Victoria's record in terms of the longest reign ever.
Mm.
Back in, well, last year, I think, is when it actually happened.
Yeah, I loved that relationship as well. I thought that another one of my favorite scenes is when they're just sitting when he calls her in for an urgent meeting and he's like, I
Yeah,
didn't really have anything to talk to you. I just wanted to sit with you. It's like, oh, that is so sweet. I love
yeah, it
that.
is, but it is also a little disingenuous because he is trying to hide from her that he's dying,
Yeah,
and he
that's
actually
fair, I
is quite
guess.
urgently trying to prepare her for what's about to happen to her.
Yeah, but I think it was also genuine too. At least I felt
Yeah,
he
no,
really.
that's true. That's no, I'd like it. That's true. I can hold both thoughts in my head at the same time. It's quite true. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, and that was really cute the way he says, he's like, I start with the beginning of the pile and I go through and they think they put the stuff they don't want me to see at the bottom, so I flip it
yeah,
around.
yeah.
That
There
was
was
really good.
one little inaccuracy in there. From what I've read, they do not give him boxes on Christmas.
Oh,
Because in that scene, she said, "Oh, you have to do them even on Christmas." He said, "Even on Christmas." Well, that's nice, and I see what they're trying to express there. But the fact of the matter is that they never give them that those are never given on Christmas Day or on Easter Sunday. Those are the only two
oh,
exceptions.
okay. When do they get the boxes? Do they get them?
Daily, every single day.
Oh, okay. So those boxes with all the notes. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, and it's basically like bills from it's the equivalent of Congress sending bills to the president. They're actually coming in from the Commonwealth, and they do not become law. And that means not just England, but you know, from Northern Ireland to Belize to at that time, like all over the world,
Hmm.
anywhere where uh, the British Empire had extended, that's that was the jurisdiction of the king, right? So
Mm. Hmm.
uh, another interesting thing, and I think we'll get more into this later, but that I think George nicely groomed her for being an extremely well-informed monarch, because reading about Elizabeth's reign, everyone is constantly surprised by how much she knows about everything, about how prepared she is for every meeting with every dignitary and important person she comes across. She knows their countries well. She understands what they need. She talks to them like she belongs to the nation. She'll come into America. Or when she's spoken with the American president, she knows our problems and our press and our anxieties intimately.
Hmm.
Probably more so than either of the people currently running for president. Um,
Yeah,
but
I wouldn't put it past it. I
but
would,
enough of
yeah.
that.
I think you and I probably know
Yeah.
more. Yeah. Okay, so yeah, and she just seems like a very impressive lady. You know, like that she has managed to always be dignified and always um, I don't know, just all these years, she's never really had like her children have had scandal. There's been scandal in her family, but she's always been dignified and she's always been, uh, impressive in that regard. I feel like.
Yeah. Now, and to be sure that she's made missteps, but that makes
Hmm.
her even more interesting, because the way she's handled those missteps has been very graceful.
And it's gonna be interesting to see that play out in the show.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to it anxiously. Yeah.
Hmm.
I One thing that kept I felt like Elizabeth was a little one note in this episode, but that one note was important.
Mm.
And
Because
that
there
was
are going to be 6 seasons of the show, and
oh
going over her entire life. And so I think there are going to be different actresses, different seasons, playing her different eras. And right now we have Claire Foy is the woman who is playing Queen Elizabeth,
uh-huh.
and Matt Smith as um, Matt Smith is of course playing Prince Philip, and we a lot of people know Matt Smith from Doctor Who. He was famous for Doctor Who, but uh, Claire Foy, she was on a BBC production of Little Dorrit, which I actually love. I haven't ever read Little Dorrit, but I've seen the miniseries, and it is so interesting. It's such a good story, and I really want to read the book because I really liked, and her performance is great in that because she is just, I don't know, it's just a tragedy what happens to her in that film, and anyway, it's really good, and so that's the only place I had seen her before. But Matt Smith I had seen just recently in uh, I'd seen him in Pride and Prejudice and Zombies.
Oh.
Oddly enough, yeah, he played Mr. Collins, and he was great. I liked that movie. I know it didn't get that good of reviews, but I thought it was really good, and I really thought it was entertaining, and he was so funny as Mr. Collins. And anyway, I think he's the only thing I haven't liked him in is he was in Terminator Genesis, whatever they wanted to call it. I didn't like that, and he wasn't very good in it. But other than that, I've really liked what I've seen from him. He's great in
Yeah.
this, I think.
Yeah, pretty solid. And but no, I my heart went out to Elizabeth as a character. Like she, I think, and we've talked about this before in our Star Trek podcast. I think that in modern cinema and television, the best female characters are bold, they're assertive, they make decisions on their own, but they also have this aspect to them that they're your little sister and you want to protect them and you want
Mm-hmm.
to see them happy and well. Um, yeah, you instantly get that feeling for her, and she carries that off well. But
Yeah.
the one note that I'm complaining about a little bit is just that, just a little, mind you, I really like her performance, but
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of the deer in the headlights. a lot
Yeah.
of oh no, this I'm gonna have to be clean, and I really don't want to think about it. No, no, it's not gonna happen. Don't talk about it. Don't think about it. You can see all those things happen on her face, and actually, that's what she does so skillfully. Is that like
Yeah.
you see all those thoughts playing on her face. This would make lousy radio, and that's a good thing.
Yeah, no, I can see that. Yeah, she did kind of have a similar expression through a lot of the scenes. It would be nice. It was nice when she would smile because you had it'd been a lot of while since we'd seen her smile
Yeah,
in the episode. So also, I thought Jared Harris as King George was so good. I kept thinking, okay, he's dying, and then like he's off hunting. Like
yeah.
I kept, I don't know. He was because he I know him from Mad Men. He was on Mad
Oh,
Men.
okay.
He was great in that, and devastating in Mad Men. And he's a great actor. And so,
I actually found him to be kind of distracting. There's something
oh
about
yeah,
that. I kept forgetting. He kept reminding me that I was watching a show.
hmm,
For some reason, I found him to be, and then this is just a matter of personal taste.
sure.
This is not a judgment on his skill, really. It's just I kept getting distracted by, oh, it's Jared Harris. Oh, there's this that's cool, Jared Harris with his cool Jared Harris voice. And
So you know him. What do you know him from, Jared
okay,
Harris?
my first encounter with him was from a VH1 TV movie called Two of Us,
Oh,
where he
huh.
played John Lennon opposite Aidan Quinn as Paul McCartney.
Oh, random.
And it was kind of interesting because it was like a reunion. It was a fictional reunion between the two characters in 1976. So what would have happened if Paul McCartney had just come and hung out? Anyway, it was a fun little thing. It's on YouTube. You can go find it.
Hmm.
It's kind of a fun little watch if you like the Beatles. But and then I remember him from like Mr. Deeds and kind of more less serious stuff. I've always seen him in like actually very goofy kind of comedic roles. He's kind of goofy,
Oh,
John Lennon. He does have some heavy moments, but he's kind of a goofball. And so
okay. Because
now,
in Mad Men, he's very similar to this role. He is
oh,
in Mad Men, he comes on when the firm kind of gets the advertising firm gets sold to this British firm in I think it's like season 3 or 4 or something like that. Anyway, and he ends up getting sent to New York to sort of run things for this British firm. And him and John Draper and Roger Sterling and Joan end up having this coup kind of and creating their own advertising division.
hmm,
And he's kind of the one that's always the like Don's kind of the dreamer kind of. He's the one that isn't practical, and the Jared Harris character, he's the one that has the family to support. He's the one that gets the pressure from his wife, this kind of thing. And his story is very very tragic in it, and I won't spoil Mad Men, but anyway, so for me, it was I didn't have that experience because I had experienced it from Mad Men.
okay, yeah. So yeah, this kind of leads into my question. So what did you feel were the strongest performances in the weakest?
So I really thought that Jared Harris was the strongest performance. I thought that he was vulnerable and he seemed like a loving father. And just every time he would cough, it felt real. It felt like he was really coughing up blood. And I don't know. I just really felt for him. And then when he finds out people haven't been honest with him, and I don't know, I just thought it was so good. The one that didn't work for me was John Lithgow as Winston Churchill. I think it could work for me. I just have to let it kind of grow on me a little bit more. But it seemed a little one man play kind of thing, like someone like. And he didn't. I don't know. Does Churchill not have a strong British accent? Because I was surprised he didn't really even sound British to me
That's interesting. No,
very
he
much.
did, but it's maybe not the accent you were expecting.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. He just sounded. I don't know. It just didn't sound that British to me, and I don't know. I wasn't that crazy about him as Churchill.
That's
But
interesting because my answer was going to be kind of the opposite, but I think you're persuading me a little bit. I was going to say that Lithgow was the best in this one.
that's really interesting.
Yeah, and I think he did a nice job showing sort of Churchill's ego and his bombast without falling into impersonation. Because Churchill's kind of like Schwarzenegger. Maybe not everybody, but a lot of people think they can do him. You know, and so he had to kind of like get past that, I think, and find the person in there.
Hmm.
And
Interesting.
yeah, I really love that moment. Oh yeah, there were actually one thing that surprised me about this was there were so many. Just as an aside, there were so many moments where I was so moved by what was happening on the screen, like where actually I got a little choked up by the patriotism and the ceremony and stuff, um, and the tradition, the very deep tradition involved with all this stuff. And I sometimes envy the British. They're, more than 1,000 years of history that they have behind them. But
Yeah.
I did enjoy that scene though, where he goes, Nazis. They're all prominent Nazis. He sort of, his wife is sort of embarrassing.
I love the actress who played his wife.
Yeah, she's quite good.
She's always good. What is her name? Uh, let's see here. I love her. She is in so many great Clementine Churchill, Harriet Walter. She is a great actress. I don't think I've ever seen her be bad in anything. She's in a bunch of Jane Austen. She's in a bunch of BBC stuff, and
Okay.
and anyways, I just think she's super, super talented.
Yeah, she was
But yeah,
good. She's kind of in the
mm-hmm,
background, but she does have some important work to do.
mm-hmm. I mean, yeah, this is gonna be like the Downton Abbey in a way, in the sense that you're gonna have these amazing actors playing these smaller parts. I mean, you've got Eileen Atkins, Dame Eileen Atkins coming up as, well, I guess maybe she was in just a little bit. She's Queen Mary. Jeremy Northam is certainly a respected actor that has been in a number of things. Anyway, there's a long list of people coming up this season, and that are kind of famous British
Cool.
British actors. So that's really fun. But yeah, I don't know. I think I need to see more of Lithgow as Churchill, just kind of sell it for me.
Yeah.
That it's not kind of, I don't know. It's sort of like the difference between a typical version of a. Did you ever see the movie The Butler?
No, I never did.
Okay, well, The Butler is fine. It's not a bad movie, but I did feel like there were a lot of people that were giving impressions of the various presidents that the Butler served in.
Oh,
Like,
yeah. Okay.
yeah, and some of them worked better than others, but for the most part, that part of it didn't really work for me. And I kind of felt, I guess, a little compared to, you look at Daniel Day-Lewis in Lincoln, where he like just becomes that character and you're just immersed. And I mean, everybody can't be Daniel Day-Lewis, I get that, but it's just, you almost forget that Daniel Day-Lewis is an Irishman, that he's just feels so Lincoln. It's amazing. So anyway.
So yeah, by the same token, I feel like you've helped me appreciate Jared Harris's performance a little more. Maybe in episode 2, I can get over, something I think I did already kind of get over. I think by the last scene, where he's kind of having that man-to-man talk with Philip.
Yeah, that was so good.
Yeah, I thought at that point I went, "Oh, this is King George."
I feel like every father-in-law needs to say that speech. Like, wouldn't the world be better if every father-in-law said, "She's the job"?
Yeah, it's going to be a gift now, and send it on Twitter, and
yeah.
Congratulations, yeah.
But I thought the real star was the script. I thought the script was so good. It was almost impossible for these actors, even Lithgow, who I wasn't completely sold on, The script was so good, and I I thought it was just rich and interesting, and it drew you into the characters. And I honestly didn't know what was going to happen. Like I said with King George, like I kept thinking like, oh, this scene he's going to die, and then he wouldn't, or and I don't know. I think that Peter Morgan just did an excellent job. It wasn't bored. I wasn't bored, at least. I didn't feel like it was sort of a dry procedural. I thought it was the script was excellent.
Well, yeah, and it never talks down to the audience. It does sort of like I think there's lots of stuff that helps that I've read about. But
Mm.
I think he gives you enough information to appreciate the important things that are going on in the story.
Yeah, without it feeling like, oh, we're getting all this exposition.
Yeah. Well, and I do think too, a baked in assumption is that you've seen the King's Speech, at least for episode one.
Mm-hmm.
There's because they don't the his stuttering and his methods for overcoming the stuttering are present,
Mm-hmm.
but they're not paraded or explained, or there's no dialogue given over to just explaining it.
Mm-hmm.
But it does show. They show don't tell, right? Throughout, and that's really effective.
Yeah.
At first, I was sort of struck by the dirty limerick story. I was like, what's going on with these dirty limericks? And then I remembered, oh yeah, okay, yeah, and I had to sort of like catch myself up a little bit, but I did. And I think that it's smart it's smart of the writer to assume that yeah, we'll figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I have to agree. The script is a standout in terms of the triumph here.
Yeah, because you could have all the great sets, great actors. If that script is boring and it's just full of sort of cliches and whatever, then forget it. It doesn't even matter.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So, uh,
What did you learn from this episode?
um, you know, I don't know very much about this part of Elizabeth's life. So a lot of it was basically all new. But I think the most thing I learned, like I said, was about the marriage of Philip and Elizabeth, and just how like it was a real marriage, and I had no idea like whether it was just sort of a marry for for position kind of thing, or if it was like a real love match,
Uh-huh.
and a real active marriage. And so I guess that's what I learned the most, was just kind of about that.
Yeah. One thing I will sort of caution you and all the viewers on is that our sources for a lot of this stuff are pretty limited. So
Mm-hmm.
you need to understand that since they're trying to write some drama here, they may
Sure.
be creating drama where in reality none existed.
Yeah.
It looks like the trajectory that they're going with is that Philip is going to be dragging his feet a bit. I'm not sure that there's a lot of evidence for that. Especially when of course, you meant it was. I sort of grinned when you mentioned spoilers earlier because spoil history. Spoilers. The Nazis lose the war. That kind of thing.
That's true.
Spoilers. King George VI dies. Like we all know this.
That's true. Good point.
Uh,
But yeah, I guess if people don't know.
so, like, we do have to, in terms of, especially in terms of the intimate interactions between these people, we do need to remember that this is drama, and
Sure.
and we have to take a little bit of grain of salt with it. And two, this is a drama about a very private family, and something about that sense of privacy makes us want to know a little more about them.
That's fair. That's definitely true. It's a good point.
And so they're sort of feeding a bit of a sensational desire on our part, right, to be a fly on the wall for history, right,
Mm-hmm.
and this I guess that's going to be a tension throughout the whole series is this push and pull between the private life of the family versus their public duties and their public responsibility.
Yeah. Well, and what's interesting too is that a lot of British things that were actually made popular in the United States first and then became popular in the UK. Like I know for a fact, All Creatures Great and Small, that series about the British vet, that was popular in the United States before it was popular in England. I know that I think there's some of that with Sherlock Holmes that became very popular in the United States, but I know for sure that I've just heard that a number of times that things would kind of be introduced to the United States would catch on and then would sort of move over. And there is something I think that we are just sort of fascinated. I don't know if it's because we don't have our royal couple and so we're sort of attached to theirs or whatever. But I remember when there was the royal wedding and it was just like it was at a time when I just felt like there was just nothing good happening. And now it feels like, boy, that was probably a really good time compared to now.
Yeah.
But at the time it seemed like, oh, there's just nothing happy. And I was so glad to have the royal wedding to kind of think about because it was just something happy. A person was becoming a princess. That was so great. My friends and I, we had this big party, tea party where we watched the wedding and it was great.
Yeah.
We made hats. It was very fun.
Yeah,
Uh,
you cannot copy some of what they've got there, where they've got sort of this permanent family that's always a part of things. There's a great special on Netflix by Stephen Fry. It's really just a talk that he's giving live, uh, but it's very good. If you want to look for it, it's if you just look up Stephen Fry, you'll find it. But he makes some really interesting points about the Royals because he's had some contact with them.
mm,
And he's a very bright guy to boot. But the point I love, and because he spent a lot of time in the United States doing American TV and stuff, he's an actor. Is
mhm.
he his comparison? He talks about the weekly. This is what I really envy about British government. Um, the weekly visits between the prime minister and the sovereign, the king or the queen. Um, so this is the way Stephen Fry puts it. He says, okay, so imagine that somehow Uncle Sam were a real person um, who really lived maybe in some special room in the White House or something, or maybe somewhere else entirely. And every week, the president had to walk into this room and talk with someone who represents the people in a way that the president never could, and answer to him for everything he's done in that week. And Stephen Fry says, I think that there's a wisdom in that. There's a wisdom in setting that up so that yes, while the prime minister really holds most of the power, uh, that is tempered by having this other figure, this other stand-in for the people,
Hmm.
uh, who otherwise that otherwise they would just be power mad, right?
Well, and I loved that scene, that line of dialogue when the king says to Churchill that that I missed you. I missed our meetings.
Yeah, yeah,
The predecessor
the
wasn't the
friendship.
same.
Yeah, and one thing that's another thing too, where you should take it with a grain of salt because what happens in that room is never discussed ever. Like they both on all sides throughout recorded history, both sides have been very tight-lipped about what happens in that room,
Hmm.
those meetings. So this is pure guesswork
Hmm.
on the part of the
Okay.
writers. I think it's pretty good. I mean, it seems plausible to me, and it looks right, feels right. Um, but yeah, so there's that.
It makes sense that George and Winston would be friends and would he would miss talking to somebody like Churchill. He had to be an interesting person to talk to.
Sure. And whether that
I
they
would
were
think.
really, whether there was really those amicable feelings between them to that degree, I like the idea that the king would have his personal feelings about this person or that he
Yeah.
can't be very public about it, but he does have feelings.
That makes sense. That makes sense. And I'm trying to think if there was any other scenes that, I mean, it is sort of interesting. The Do you think there's any truth to the differences between Elizabeth and her sisters, and how her sisters were, obviously having some kind of relationship with a married man, wanting him to go on holiday right in front of their
I'm not
mother?
so sure about that. I'm not so sure about. I need to do some more research on how much truth there is to that. I smell someone trying to cook some drama where maybe there wasn't any. And I know
Mm-hmm.
there were certainly rumors about Margaret being a little too friendly with somebody.
It seems highly unlikely that she would say that in front of her mother, even if
Say
she
what
was.
exactly?
That she would say that the guy needed to come to Christmas, and I don't know. I just felt like that conversation. I kind of doubted that that would happen in front of her mother.
It struck me as kind of plausible because I think she was naive. I think she was kind of naive about it.
Mm,
I think she thought she was putting one over on everybody, and of course, Elizabeth makes it clear, "Wow, you're disgusting. What are you doing?"
yeah.
Um, and you're not fooling anyone. Yeah. So, yeah, I don't know. We'll have to see what
Hmm.
happens there. I need to do some more research on that. Um, that one kind of blindsided me. I went, "Whoa, I don't remember reading anything about that at all." So, um, yeah, interesting stuff.
Um, where did I read? Oh shoot, I just didn't write it down. But the music was, I forget, it's somebody famous that did the music, and it was really good. I thought
Cool.
in it.
All right.
Let's see if I can find it. But yeah, I thought that was also really good. Helped you feel sort of immersed, or kind of reminded me of the Downton Abbey theme, which I think is just an excellent theme.
Uh-huh.
And let's see here. Do the Crown music. Oh, I guess Stranger Things. That was the other. That's the other show
Oh,
I've uh, I've binged. I guess that was really good. Excellent. So, and oh, we got to talk about. So at the wedding, she adds to obey. What did you think of that? To the
yeah.
vows.
Well, I think, yeah. I think it expresses a lot of things simultaneously. I think it expresses her devotion to Philip, um, and I think she wants to make it clear to everyone the depth of that devotion. Um, for one thing. For another thing, I think she's sort of betraying a reluctance to pursue her destiny, uh, because I think it's clear she's the heir. She knows it by now, but she's hoping that it'll be, no, maybe 1972. Maybe for long, long down the road when when dear old dad is old and gray, and he's fought the good fight and kept the faith, and he's done. Not within a few years. Um, Hello.
Yeah,
Okay,
I
yeah.
can hear. Yeah,
You were just very still for a second. I was like,
sorry.
okay. Anyway, um, yeah. So I think it was just, I think that's what's going on there. What do you make of it?
I think she actually also is kind of trying to remind him that he has to obey her.
Mm, yeah.
That she's going to be the queen, and that this is an essential part of their marriage. Is that she's going to have to obey him a lot.
Interesting. Okay, yeah. Well, I think that too. That's a good observation. I think too. There's an implied give and take. One of like, well, okay, I'm pledging now to obey you. Someday you'll have to pledge to obey me. Um, so like, there's I'm setting up a reciprocity there, right? That's actually kind of a principle in sales because I work in marketing, so I've learned this stuff. There's a principle in sales of reciprocity that when you're given free things in a sales environment, it's to create the sense of obligation to buy. Because, oh, well, they gave me this nice latte, shouldn't I, buy a suit, or yeah. Um,
The music, it's Hans Zimmer did the music, so
oh, okay,
yeah, that's why it's so good. And it's
awesome. I
nice
might
to
have
hear
to give it
something
a listen.
it's nice to hear something from him that isn't, like he's like he
Sounds
did in all the
sounds like
Nolan
things that we know
films and the
already. Yeah.
Batman films. That was very, I thought, verging on self parody at a certain point. Like it was just all sounding the same to
Oh
me.
yeah. Oh yeah. I agree. Yep.
So this was refreshing. That
Dark Knight's great though, right? So
what's that?
Dark Knight was good though.
Oh yeah, like it's good. It just got really repetitive. By the time I got to Batman v Superman, I'm like, oh my gosh, I've heard this score so many times.
Well, anyways,
Oh.
you can talk to me about that from another time. But
Yeah. But anyway, so it was refreshing to hear something different. That's all I'm saying.
yeah, no, I it was
Um,
noticeably good, but I wasn't. I was never going. I was never taken out of it by the music. So
yeah.
that's good.
So I like the lines where he says, Philip says, "I've signed myself away." Oh, come on, go down. And Elizabeth says, "Or won the greatest prize."
Yeah.
And stupid thing. And he says, "That's certainly what they think. It's what I think too." So that's why I think she did the obey. It's just to kind of remind him that he's got the greatest prize.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that he signed himself away, but he's also won the greatest prize. So anyway,
Well, I think they both find themselves in similar positions in that way. I think Elizabeth is feeling like she's going to have to sign herself away.
yeah,
That
that's true.
any private dreams or hopes she may have had, she has to put aside her duty, right? So, um, and Philip seems to be the same. They're both kind of giving up. They're laying. It's interesting that that hymn, "I vowed to thee my country." There's a line in there. The love that asks no questions, the love that stands, or that what are the lines? The love that stands the test, that lays upon the altar the fairest and the best. They're both laying upon the altar of their country their lives. They're both,
Yeah.
swearing to forswear not all others for each other, but also themselves for their country. And it's
Well,
interesting to contemplate, yeah, watching people about to make that jump.
and it just did such a good job of kind of like whether these characters are accurate, the characters within this world of this series, it did such a good job of sort of setting it up and letting you know like this is not going to be like overly melodramatic, but we are going to obviously have some drama. It just sort of like really tantalized me, made me really excited for episode 2 to keep watching. It was just a very satisfying pilot in that way, I felt.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, we've just got a few wrap up questions.
All
What was
right.
the cool detail that you feel like you noticed that maybe nobody else did?
Hmm.
It can be about the performances, about the sets.
Well, I guess I said the music. I noticed that was a really cool detail. Um, oh, I don't know. I was just sort of impressed by everything. The costumes, the difference between the way that it was interesting to see the difference between the way that Elizabeth was dressed and her sisters were dressed. Like she was just more sort of classic, I think,
Uh-huh.
looking, and her sisters looked a little more modern in the way they were dressed, and I don't know, so just some things like that.
Yeah. One thing about the wedding dress, too. One other bit of trivia, and I promise I'll stop. Um, Elizabeth's wedding dress, that they were in rationing at that time. The whole country was still very economically troubled after the war, and everybody had everything rationed still.
Oh,
So
okay.
America was having high times. We wouldn't know anything about that because our grandparents were buying their first homes and drinking Coca Cola and going to McDonald's.
1947?
Well, no, not in 1947, but they
Isn't
were.
that when this is? This starts in 1947?
Yeah, yeah. America was smelling like a rose after the war. England was not.
Oh, that's soon after, huh? Okay.
England was having a very tough time, and the royal family was no exception. Elizabeth had to save up clothing coupons in order to get her wedding dress.
Oh,
So I thought that was kind of interesting.
yeah, that is interesting. That's really interesting.
So if you have this idea of like the royals being these spoiled people who will have the best of everything and never have to work, that you should temper that with Well, no, they were obligated to sacrifice in the same way as we were in most difficult times.
Yeah, and I think they pretty much have to pay for all their expenses
Yeah,
unless they.
they do have businesses, but they if they do have sources of wealth and income, but that's not the it's not the taxpayers. Um, Now they have been tax exempt, and there's been some give and take about like, well, should they pay taxes? Um, but much of their wealth comes from it's self-generating. In fact, part of Philip's duties over the years has been to administer that wealth and to make sure that they continue to have what they need to perform their duties.
And did you know that that the president in America has to pay for their own food
I did not know
unless
that.
it's an official state dinner or official something like that? Yeah, I learned that on an Oprah interview with the president once.
That's interesting. Oh no, though on that note, I do know that when the president visits, the costs are literally exponentially higher when the president visits than within a royal tour. Royal
Interesting.
tours are far cheaper, are far more cost efficient. Our president lives far more opulently and way more on the taxpayer dollar than the Queen does or any of her family.
Interesting.
Yeah,
That's really
we shell out way more proportionately to keep our president in a high lifestyle than they do with their king or their queen. Just food for thought if you're if you're eager to lop off the queen's head. Um, anyway, my
okay.
last question: why do you think this story is being told, and is it important to tell? And if so, why?
Interesting question. Um, well, I mean, I think partly is just there's that love of all things British, like I was talking about in America, and hmm, well, I think we'll learn a little bit more, kind of about why, as it continues to go. But we're about to have an election. We're about to have a transition of power, and that's basically what at least this first season is kind of, I think, going to be about. It's about
Right.
a woman learning to, and I think the chances are very highly we're going to have a woman president,
Mm-hmm.
and you have a woman that is going to be learning to be the monarch, be learning to run, and we have this transition of power and this new female president, for better or worse. And so I guess that would be my guess, but we'll see how it plays out.
Yeah, that's interesting. I wouldn't have drawn that parallel. I guess what I keep going to myself is I'm drawn to uh, the selflessness and the sacrifice and the sort of passion play of character that we're seeing on display here. So yeah, I'm looking forward to watching it unfold, um, and it's a great start.
Mm-hmm. Me too. I can't wait. I'm really excited. I'm excited to see uh, where the writing takes us and these various relationships that they've set up, and yeah, it's going to be really interesting, especially when you think we're going to get 6 seasons of this. That's good.
Yeah, we have lots to look forward to.
Yeah, so I'm really excited, and I was very impressed by the pilot, and I'm excited that we're going to be doing this. It's going to be a lot of fun. So it's going to be uh, we'll figure out as far as when we'll do our next episode. It is a little bit hard during the holidays, but we will try to get these 10 done, I guess, as quickly as we can. And so yeah, if you're watching this, if you have any comments, questions, then just put in the comment section. And yeah, thanks so much for doing this with me. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and we will be back with the crown coming soon. Oh, where can people find you?
Oh, I'm on Twitter at Almano Roboto. If you would like to hire me to assist you with social media or any of your business communications, I'm at tgunwriter.com.
Great. Okay. Well, thanks again, and we will be together again next to discuss episode 2.